Imagine a world where the very foundations of our history are built upon shifting sands, where empires rise not from the slow march of progress, but from the ashes of forgotten civilizations. Imagine, if you will, a chapter of our collective story so thoroughly erased that its remains are mistaken for fairy tales, its artifacts dismissed as anomalies, its very name whispered only in shadows. What if humanity's greatest cover-up was not a single event, but the deliberate burial of an entire civilization? A civilization whose legacy still haunts our architecture, our legends, and perhaps even our DNA. Tonight we embark on a journey through time, myth, and mystery. We will peer behind the veil of accepted history and into the realm of Tartaria, a name that echoes across centuries but is all but absent from the narrative we are taught. What was Tartaria? Who were its people? And why, above all, was it forgotten? To begin, let's turn the pages of history back to an era before the world was carved into the nations we know today. In the 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries, maps from Europe, Persia, China, and beyond depict a vast enigmatic land, Tartaria, or Great Tartary. Its borders stretch from the Caspian Sea to the Pacific, from the Arctic to the Himalayas, a realm so large, so mysterious, its very existence challenges our understanding of what came before. But flip forward just a century or two and Tartaria vanishes. Its lands are absorbed into Russia, China, Mongolia. Its peoples are renamed Tatars, Mongols, Cossacks. Its cities are rebranded or razed. The empire that once dominated maps is reduced to a footnote, a curiosity for antiquarians. How can a civilization so vast simply disappear? Not just physically, but from memory itself. What did the world know of Tartaria? Persian and Central Asian chronicles spoke of mighty cities along the Silk Road, ruled by khans whose wealth rivaled any sultan or emperor. The Chinese in their annals described the lands to the north as home to powerful tribes and mysterious kingdoms, sometimes allies, sometimes adversaries, always enigmas. In Russian folklore, legends abound of white stone palaces, cities of gold, and heroes born from the wild steppe. Even in Western Europe, Tartaria loomed as a land of wonders and terrors, home to monsters, magicians, and men who could harness the power of the stars. But these glimpses are fleeting, contradictory. One traveler's city of learning is another's den of barbarian. One chronicler's empire is another's wasteland. Is this simply the confusion of distant observers or the residue of something deliberately obscured? Mainstream history offers a simple explanation. Tartaria, they say, was never a unified empire. The word Tartaria was a European catch-all for the unknown lands east of Moscow and north of China, a label born of ignorance, not fact. The region, historians argue, was home to nomadic tribes, Mongols, Tatars, Turkic peoples. Great rulers rose, Genghis Khan, Timur, but no single Tartarian civilization ever existed. The maps are relics of a time before accurate geography, nothing more. But is this explanation sufficient? Why did so many sources over so many centuries agree on the existence of Tartaria? Why do records of cities, technologies, and customs vanish so abruptly? And if Tartaria was fiction, why such effort to erase its traces? Why are its maps, once so common, now rare and locked in private collections? Why do so many official histories gloss over the region with a single line? To find the truth, we must look beyond the written word to the evidence etched into the land itself. All across Eurasia, from the Baltic to the Pacific, lie the ruins of monumental architecture, structures whose origins defy easy explanation. Consider the star forts, massive geometric citadels, their walls radiating in perfect symmetry. Some, like the Kronstadt fortress near St. Petersburg, are documented as 18th century constructions, but others in remote corners of Siberia appear ancient, even primordial. Who built these fortresses? Why do they share designs with similar structures in Italy, India, and even North America? Were they truly military, or did they serve another forgotten purpose? Then there are the so-called mud-flooded buildings. In cities as far-flung as Moscow, Paris, Istanbul, and San Francisco, we find grand ornate facades half buried in soil, windows and doors at street level, but matching ones hidden below as if swallowed by a sudden deluge of earth. Is this the result of poor urban planning, or a cataclysmic event that rewrote the landscape? Why do so many official records remain silent, or are they too erased? And what of the mysterious underground tunnels, stretching for miles beneath cities like Odessa, Paris, and Edinburgh? Were these mere quarries and sewers, or the arteries of a lost civilization? Among the most provocative theories in the study of Tartaria is the so-called mud flood. According to proponents, a global disaster, whether natural or engineered, buried entire cities in mud, erasing evidence of a previous civilization. They point to photographic evidence from the 19th century city streets under construction, with workers digging down to reveal ornate facades, doorways and windows meters below the current ground level. Critics argue that these are simply the results of urban development, cities built atop older layers or roads raised over time, but the scale and consistency of the phenomenon raise questions. If the mud flood happened, when did it occur? Why is it absent from historical record? And if it did not, why do so many cities share the same buried architecture, often with no clear explanation? Some researchers believe the architecture of Tartaria hints at lost technologies, systems of energy, sound, and vibration unknown to modern science. Consider the great domes and spires of Tartarian buildings, adorned with metallic finials, orbs, and rods. Were these merely decorative, or did they serve a functional purpose? Some theorists suggest they were part of an ancient wireless energy grid, akin to the experiments of Nikola Tesla centuries later. Others point to the acoustics of grand halls and cathedral spaces, designed to amplify sound, perhaps even heal or energize. What if these buildings were more than places of worship or governance? What if they were machines themselves, harnessing principles now lost? Of course, mainstream science is skeptical. No artifacts of such technology have been found, at least not officially. But the mysteries persist, and the questions grow. If Tartaria existed, how was its memory so thoroughly erased? The answer perhaps lies in the politics of mapping. Maps are not mere representations. They are instruments of power, shaping what is seen and what is forgotten. In the late 18th and early 19th centuries, as the Russian Empire expanded, the name Tartaria vanishes from official charts. New borders are drawn, old cities are renamed, and unfamiliar peoples are classified as Russians, Kazakhs, or Mongols. Even in the West, encyclopedias and textbooks revise their entries. The sprawling empire becomes a myth, its people scattered into ethnic groups, its history folded into that of its conquerors. Why this systematic erasure? Was it simply the march of empire, or something more deliberate? In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, a strange phenomenon sweeps the world: the rise of the world's fairs. In London, Paris, Chicago, and St. Louis, entire cities of monumental architecture are constructed, seemingly overnight. The buildings are vast, ornate, and built in a style eerily reminiscent of Tartarian ruins. Officially, these structures are temporary, built of plaster and lath, meant to dazzle and then be demolished. But photographs reveal a different story: stone columns, intricate ironwork, and engineering feats, far beyond what should have been possible in such short time frames. What if these world's fairs were not new constructions, but the unveiling or repurposing of older, forgotten buildings? What if their demolition was not a matter of practicality, but a deliberate act of erasure? The mystery of Tartaria is not confined to Eurasia. Across the Americas, we find traces of similar architecture: star forts in New York, New Orleans, and San Juan, Grand, old-world buildings in cities supposedly founded in the 18th or 19th centuries, unexplained earthworks and mounds whose origins predate official settlement by centuries. Could these be relics of a global civilization, one that left its mark on every continent? Or are we seeing the echoes of parallel developments, lost to time and conquest? And why do so many indigenous legends speak of giants, builders and sky people who vanished before the arrival of Europeans? Throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries, a wave of disasters sweeps the world's great cities. Fires raze Chicago, San Francisco, and Moscow. Floods inundate St. Petersburg and Paris. Earthquakes flatten Lisbon, Tokyo, and Charleston. Each time, the official records blame natural causes or, in some cases, acts of God. But in the aftermath, entire neighborhoods are rebuilt in new styles, old buildings are demolished, and archives are lost forever. Is it coincidence that the erasure of Tartarian architecture so often follows disaster? Or were some of these catastrophes more than accidents? A convenient means to wipe the slate clean. For decades, the mystery of Tartaria lingered in obscurity, but the rise of the internet has changed everything. Today, researchers from around the world share discoveries, theories, and evidence in real time. High-resolution satellite imagery reveals hidden star forts, buried ruins, and geometric patterns invisible from the ground. Online archives unlock forgotten maps, photographs, and encyclopedias. Amateur historians crowdsource translations, analyze building blueprints, and reconstruct vanished cities in digital form. The mainstream may scoff, but the questions refuse to die. If the official story is complete, why do so many mysteries remain? Of course, not all who seek Tartaria are convinced by the evidence. Skeptics point out the lack of direct archaeological proof. No Tartarian texts, no unambiguous artifacts. They warn of pareidolia, seeing patterns where none exist. Many anomalies, they argue, have simple explanations. Star forts are well-documented military structures. Mud flood buildings result from changing street levels. The architecture of World's Fairs was designed to impress, not to deceive. But is skepticism always objective? Or can it too become dogma, protecting established narratives at all costs? And what of the anomalies that remain unexplained? Why do so many official records vanish or contradict each other? Who decides which questions are worth asking? To understand why Tartaria might have been erased, we must ask, who benefits from forgetting? Throughout history, conquerors have rewritten the past to legitimize their rule. Cities are renamed, monuments defaced, records destroyed. The victors inherit not just the land, but the story itself. If Tartaria was a civilization of unity, knowledge, and perhaps even technology, its memory would threaten the new order. Better to erase it, to claim its achievements, to scatter its people, to turn its cities to dust. Is this not the pattern repeated across the ages, from Rome to Britain to the present day? Perhaps the most haunting possibility is that Tartaria never truly vanished. Its legacy lingers in architecture repurposed, in technologies misunderstood, in stories told by those who remember, if only dimly. Consider the Tartarian buildings still standing in St. Petersburg, Istanbul, Boston, and Buenos Aires, structures whose style, scale, and craftsmanship defy their supposed age. Consider the artifacts in museum basements, strange machines, intricate models, maps that do not fit the official timeline. Are these merely coincidences or reminders of a world we have chosen to forget? At its heart, the story of Tartaria is about more than bricks and maps. It is about the human need for memory, for stories that connect us to the past, and through it to each other. Why do so many cultures remember a time of giants, golden ages, and catastrophes? Why do our myths so often speak of lost cities, forbidden knowledge, and the promise of return? Are these memories mere fantasy, or echoes of a shared, forgotten trauma. In a world where history is written, revised, and erased, who holds the final word on what is real? To seek the truth about Tartaria is to walk a razor's edge. On one side lies the danger of believing too much, of seeing conspiracies in every corner, of mistaking speculation for fact. On the other lies the risk of believing too little, of dismissing anomalies, trusting authority without question, and letting the past be molded by those in power. The only safe path is skepticism, true skepticism, which questions all narratives, mainstream and alternative alike, which weighs evidence, demands proof, and remains open to the possibility that we do not yet know the whole story. Ask yourself, who gains when we stop asking questions? Who loses when we forget? Let us imagine for a moment that Tartaria was real, that an empire of learning, technology, and unity once bridged east and west, north and south, that its collapse was not a slow fade, but a sudden catastrophic erasure by disaster, by conquest, or by design. How would this change our understanding of history? Would we see the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, even the Industrial Revolution, in a new light, as rediscoveries rather than inventions? Would we recognize the fingerprints of Tartaria in the architecture of our cities, the rhythms of our music, the patterns of our myth, and most importantly, would we learn from its fall or repeat its mistakes? The quest for Tartaria is in the end the quest for the truth itself. Every map erased, every building buried, every name forgotten. These are not just losses but clues. Clues that history is not a closed book, but a living mystery. Perhaps we will never know the full story. Perhaps Tartaria will remain forever just out of reach. A whisper on the wind, a shadow at the edge of the map, but the search matters. For in seeking Tartaria, we learn to question, to connect, to remember. We learn that the past is not dead, but waiting patiently for those willing to look. So what do you believe? Was Tartaria a myth, a mistake, or a memory? The greatest cover-up in human history may not be a single event, but the slow, deliberate erasure of our own curiosity, the refusal to ask what if. History is not finished. The map is not complete. Somewhere beneath the layers of earth, stone, and silence, the truth may yet be found. If you've felt the pull of hidden history, if you've glimpsed the outlines of a world forgotten, know this: you are not alone. The search continues, and every question brings us closer to the answer. What if the greatest secret is not what we have lost, but what we have yet to find?